It's not a controversial statement to say that the most exciting and marketable part of any roller coaster is the first drop. After all, we don't spend much time talking about the drop angle or height of mid-layout camelback hills. The selling point of a coaster is that first big drop, whether it's 200, 300, 400 feet or more, when the ride turns all of your potential energy into kinetic energy and sends you careening into the next element, achieving the top speed of the coaster and putting you under the most positive G-forces that the coaster has to offer, where you go from climbing to being weightless to being squeezed down into your seat like you're a spring. So knowing that everyone loves the first drop of a roller coaster, it follows that everyone would absolutely love a roller coaster that had a sheer vertical drop, right? Well, welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. Today, I'm going to be defending the B&M dive coaster model. Now, you may be like I was and say, Josef, why are you defending the B&M dive coaster model? Everyone loves the B&M dive coaster model. Who's attacking it? I thought so too, until I went on the internet and started getting involved in coaster enthusiast circles online. Forceless. Doesn't do anything. Uninspired, boring layout. GP coaster. The list goes on and on. The hate that gets heaped on these models seems to know no end. When I went back to Valravn during Halloween Weekends 2025 for a night ride, I had this exchange with the ride operator. Hey, weren't you guys just here? Yeah, I love this one. Why? Millennium Force is right there. We're riding that one again next. Hey, if you don't like B&Ms, can I have your hat? It's not even in my top 5 B&Ms. Fury 325, Orion, Leviathan. Oh, So the hate for these coasters is real, or at least the apathy, and I personally don't understand it. I love these roller coasters. I cannot wait to ride more of them. But before I get into all the reasons why I love these roller coasters, let's go over a brief history of the model. The first B&M dive coaster, Oblivion at Alton Towers, was literally a proof of concept. Its layout consists of the lift hill, the dive into a tunnel, and then an overbanked left turn. It quite nearly approaches the line between roller coaster and drop tower, but it stays on the roller coaster side of that line. The concept caught on, and the next installation was a clone of Oblivion at Jamfusan Fancy World in China. SheiKra at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay was the third dive coaster, but the first one to feature a 90-degree drop, as well as the first one to include any other elements besides a drop and a left turn. Many of SheiKra's elements became mainstays of the model, such as its Immelman inversion after the first drop, and its second 90-degree drop midway through the course of the ride. It also featured water scoops on the back of the train car that caused a splashdown after the second drop's tunnel. Griffin at Busch Gardens Williamsburg was a similar ride, with an alternate ending, installed in 2007, and this was the last installation in the US for 9 years. B&M began offering both custom layouts and clones of Oblivion, Griffin, and SheiKra to parks, based on their budget and specific footprint requirements. 2 SheiKra clones were installed in China in 2008 and 2009. Kraka was built with a custom layout at Hyde Park in Germany in 2011, followed by an Oblivion clone in Italy in 2015. 2015 also saw the opening of Baron 1898, a heavily themed custom layout in the Netherlands. 2016 saw the beginning of a record-breaking arms race for the dive coaster. Valravn opened at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio in 2016, as the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster. This marks the point where public interest in the dive coaster model began to peak, and B&M capitalized on this by continuing to market clones of their smaller dive models and small custom layouts, while also pushing the limits of the dive coaster to new and greater heights. South Korea welcomed the addition of a Griffin clone in 2018 named Draken, while Liseberg Park in Sweden constructed Valkyria, the tallest and longest dive coaster in Europe. Continuing the record-breaking trend, Yukon Striker came out in 2019, tying Valraven's height record from the ground, but beating its dive record by diving into a tunnel, and setting the most inversions record at 4, a record that would last for 6 seasons. Emperor at SeaWorld follows the layout conventions of the newer dive coasters, but foregoes the mid-course brake run, offering a more relentless ride that put Emperor at the top of many enthusiast dive coaster rankings for several years. Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas opened in 2022 as a record breaker not in height, length, or inversions, but dive angle. Eschewing the 90-degree drop that had been the standard since Shikra, Cliffhanger was the first with a beyond vertical 95-degree drop. This cartoonishly themed ride was initially intended to be installed at Six Flags Great America in Illinois, but Great America decided they, quote, wanted a taller, more intense dive coaster with more inversions, end quote, and sent that coaster, Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger, to Six Flags Fiesta Texas. Iron Menace at Dorney Park came next, immediately tying the drop angle record and also including one of B&M's classic angled loops, an element that harkens back to their stand-up coaster model. After Iron Menace came that taller, more intense dive coaster with more inversions that was custom ordered by Six Flags Great America, Wrath of Rakshasa. This is one of my most anticipated rides on my upcoming trip next spring to Illinois. Taking the record for dive angle from Cliffhanger by 1 degree, and the record for most inversions from Yukon Striker, but also taking a page out of Emperor's book by eschewing the mid-course brake run. This looks to be a more relentless and thrilling installation of the dive coaster than anything before it. That is, until 2 weeks ago. Six Flags just announced that they are going to be building a Giga dive coaster, Tormenta Rampaging Run, next season at Six Flags Over Texas. This coaster hasn't even broke ground yet, and is already at the very top of my bucket list. At 309 feet tall, with 5 inversions, Tormenta is set to shatter not just the dive coaster model records, but is set to be the first coaster over 300 feet in the entire world to feature inversions at all. The first Giga coaster with inversions. Now, these inversions are record-breaking in themselves. A 218-foot Immelman turn follows the first dive, the tallest Immelman inversion in the world, and the first roller coaster inversion in the world to break 200 feet. Now, following the old naming conventions, this is a hyper inversion. This Immelman sidewinders you to the right, immediately into the tallest vertical loop in the world at 179 feet. When this coaster opens, it'll immediately have the world record for the first and third highest inversions on any roller coaster in the world ever. And these are consecutive elements on this roller coaster. This is absolutely nuts. The first tallest and third tallest inversions in the world are right in a row on this roller coaster. Now, unlike Rakshasa and Emperor, Tormenta does feature a mid-course brake run. Now, you Immelman into that mid-course brake run, which all the Immelmans on the previous dive coaster models, for the most part, are in the sidewinders or the beginning of dive loops. This Immelman takes you into the mid-course brake run. The mid-course brake run takes you to a second near vertical drop. Now, these mid-course brake runs on the dive coaster models are one of the things that enthusiasts decry. They say that it kills the pacing of these coasters. Now, I personally disagree. We'll get more on that later. But in this case, Tormenta does everything in its power to fight the criticism that it is a pacing killer by following up this second near vertical drop into a cutback, the first cutback on any B&M coaster ever. First time B&M has ever used a cutback element. This cutback sends riders into the long, diagonal, characteristic dive coaster brake run. Now, I can understand the criticism of the very first iterations of this coaster calling the layout boring. Now, like I said before, Oblivion, it's essentially a tracked dive tower. It had one trick. That trick is a tried and true trick of a face down 0G drop. Now, that trick is inimitable. There's nothing else you can do to sustain 0Gs that long. B&M is very good at sustaining 0Gs, but nothing can sustain 0Gs as long as a free fall, and this is a free fall face down. A lot of the times into a tunnel. Very hard element to imitate. Very hard element to beat. I don't understand the criticism of the layout on rides like Valraven and Yukon Striker. I don't agree with the conclusion that these layouts are boring or that these layouts are uninspired. I certainly don't understand calling them forceless. The positive Gs that you get in these valleys at the bottom of these 0G drops are regularly some of the highest positive G spikes in their respective parks. Now, they're not sustained G-force moments, and I think that this is where some coaster enthusiasts mark their criticisms down. I think that they say when coaster enthusiasts get strong positive G moments, they want them to be sustained so that they can feel that gray out moment, like on a Camelback Hill or a huge overbank turn on Intamin Giga. That's not the trick these are doing. These are spiking the positive Gs, springing you down into your seat, and then unspringing you and keeping you in 0G as long as B&M can possibly do so. All the inversions on these coasters, all the inversions on Valraven, all the inversions on Yukon Striker, you are weightless essentially from the moment the inversion begins until you're a quarter of the way into the next element. The B&M has really mastered the art of floater airtime, of 0G airtime. Now, are you going to love this coaster? Or are you going to love these coasters if all you like is ejector? No, they don't offer ejector. They simply don't. It's not part of their repertoire. But what they do, what is part of their repertoire, they do very, very well. Now, the visual spectacle of these coasters is better in the front, and the forces are better in the back. I'll admit that. The forces are not evenly distributed throughout this coaster, and they're not evenly distributed through any coaster. I think that the expectation that they are better distributed is applied to these coasters because they have 3 rows, whereas a traditional coaster train could be 18 rows back. And you expect differences in forces when you have 18 rows. So you expect less difference in forces when you have 3 rows. But there is a difference in forces between these 3 rows. You have to take the forces that would be applied to the front of a train and to the back of a train and compress it, and that's what you're dealing with a dive coaster train. So you're still going to get more forces, more positive, more negatives, and ultimately more laterals as well in the back row of these dive coaster models. And you're definitely going to get more of the lateral and the rolling experience out on the wings than you are over the middle of the track. But the visual spectacle of these roller coasters is simply better front and center. I don't think it necessarily works against these coasters to have more visual spectacle in the front and more forces in the back. But I do think that it can warp people's experiences or expectations of these coasters. An enthusiast who's into positive Gs, who's into ejector airtime, who goes into these coasters and sits in the front, they're going to go online and they're going to say, this coaster doesn't do anything. And I think that's where these negative comments are coming from. Enthusiasts should be riding this on the back wing. People who aren't sure if they like roller coasters should be riding it front and center. Anybody who is going into this looking for the most intense experience that they can get from these coasters should be in the back, should be on the wings. Ultimately, I just can't agree with the conclusion that these coasters are boring. I love the feeling of being flown around with grace. I love the feeling of floater airtime. very few coasters get you floater airtime like a B&M dive coaster. And I don't think that relentless force assaults are the only good roller coasters in the world. I don't think they're the only coasters with value. I think that there's something to be said about the coasters that fly you around like you're effortlessly soaring. And even with the existence of the B&M wing coaster, you would think that that would be the peak of the flying sensation, being out on the wing of the coaster. I think that if I was given the ability to fly of my own volition, if I could fly around effortlessly, like I think a lot of us are pretending we can do when we get on these rides, uh, I think the very first thing I would probably do, call me crazy, maybe you too, but the very first thing I would do is fly up as high as I reasonably could, dive straight down at the earth, and close to the last second, I would loop back up. And I can't think of anything more fun sounding than that. And that's these things trick. That's these things gimmick. What is not to love? Oh, call me nuts. Another criticism that I want to address is pacing. They say that these coasters go too slowly, or they say that the mid-course brake run kills the pacing of them. Now, I've said before, I'll say again, I love fast, relentless coasters. I love Intamins. I love, Top Thrill. I love launched coasters. I love going fast. I love positive G's. I love graying out. I love blacking out. All of that. But I don't think that that is the only thing that makes a good coaster. I don't think that relentlessness is the only thing that makes a good coaster. I think that the pacing of a roller coaster is and should be handled like the pacing of a song. And in that way, Intamin is Slayer. They're all of Intamin's coasters, all of Slayer's songs are fast, relentless, heavy, they hit you hard, and then you're left to figure out what happened to you when the song is over. And those are great. I am not here to knock Slayer. I love Slayer and I love Intamin. I could ride the Millennium Force all day if they had let me. Although sometimes they'll get in the way and tell me I'm too tall, so I have to slouch down and squeeze underneath the little bar. But I don't think that Slayer songs are the only good songs in the world. And I don't think that relentless force assaults are the only good roller coasters in the world. I don't think they're the only coasters with value.
And on that token, I'm glad there are songs in the world that aren't Slayer songs. To keep the metal music analogy going, I'm glad there are Opeth songs, and I'm glad that there are B&Ms to behave like Opeth songs that can have grace and dynamics, but also aggression, and have that dynamics really be where the ride shines. The disparity between the calm, the disparity between the grace and the aggression makes the aggression hit harder in the situations where it appears. And I think B&M and Opeth do that better than Intamin and Slayer.
The last criticism that I want to address is that it's a GP coaster, or a coaster for the general public, not for coaster enthusiasts. To me, this is kind of a weird install, but it's not a new one. It's not one I'm unfamiliar with. I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of people attacking something because it's popular, especially the perceived elite members of a subculture distancing themselves from the product that they may perceive to not be for the elite or just to be for normies. I grew up playing metal music and listening to metal music And I'm yeah, I've seen it before. I'm sure I'll see it again. And you know what? When I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I'm positive that I was one of the more guilty parties of this. Where you're going to bring me some band that's on the radio, and I don't listen to the radio. That's for normies. Like I listen to extreme death metal and black metal, and thankfully, I've grown out of this mindset, and I can enjoy. I still enjoy metal, but I enjoy whatever music makes me feel good. I enjoy whatever roller coasters makes me feel good, and I thoroughly encourage everyone else to do the same. If you feel like you need to disparage B&Ms to prove to somebody that you are more of a roller coaster enthusiast than somebody else, and I feel really, really sorry for you. These are top tier amusement rides. They're great fun. They're some of the most fun I've ever had. I absolutely love these rides. If that makes you more of an enthusiast than me, then have fun, because I'm having a great time riding them. And if you are stubbornly going to cling on to this mindset, I do have some terrible news for you. You might want to skip ahead a little bit, but when you're not, you know, when you're not at your favorite park, the GP rides your favorite coaster. They do. The normies ride your favorite coaster. You're not even there to tell them that they're not experiencing it to the fullest like you are, or whatever fantasy is going on in your mind, because everybody likes roller coasters, dude. This upcoming spring, my son and I have a trip planned to Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois, and Wrath of Rakshasa is probably my most anticipated ride. I cannot wait to get on one of these dive coasters without a mid-course brake run to see if the enthusiasts are right about the pacing being better with a less dynamic and more relentless pacing. And after that, I officially need to plan a winter trip to Dallas, not a summer trip, because Texas and Vikings do not mix very well. You can see how translucent my flesh is. But sometime in next winter, Six Flags Over Texas can expect to see me, because I must ride Tormenta Rampaging Run. That is top of my bucket list. I love all roller coasters. I love every roller coaster I've ever ridden on, even the bad ones. But these vertical dive coasters have a special place in my heart. Someday I hope to ride a Gerstlauer vertical dive coaster and be able to compare the forces, compare the experience, and see how Gerstlauer holds up to my current favorite in B&M. What is it? Knott's Berry Farm. Hopefully someday I'll make it out to Knott's Berry Farm and be able to ride the Gerstlauer there. Hang time. I'm also looking forward to getting on a flying coaster while we're at Great America and seeing how that holds up with the experience of flight that I love so much, and that B&M dive coasters have been unmatched in giving me thus far. If there's another coaster model out there that you think could do it even better, please let me know in the comments so I can add it to my bucket list. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like, sharing with a friend, subscribing if you want to see more. I intend to release more videos, at least weekly, where I continue to yap about roller coasters, much like this. So if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. Don't let me miss you. I've been Josef, Vertical Drop Viking out.